Well, good morning. It has been a rather interesting week in our culture if you have not paid attention. The leader of the free world has decided to announce that he has changed his views on how he sees marriage and hopes that our country will follow him. Now, look, I'm not going to take today to specifically address that, but I am going to take a moment to make a few comments, share some things that I try to communicate throughout the week just to kind of stay in front of people along the way, and specifically on, I believe, Wednesday when he kind of came out with that statement, I was compelled to just make a few comments. And I want to set you up to be successful as you continue to be that which you are to be in the world that we are called to live in and serve today. Our whole day is going to fall underneath that as it relates to the way we relate to one another, specifically men to women. But I wanted to start by just sharing with you a few comments that I posted shortly after that announcement came out. I made this comment: if you need to be reminded of how much media and progressives are succeeding at influencing children, then watch my next post or my next tweet. For those of you, I don't believe that everybody follows me on Twitter, nor do you need to. And those of you that follow people on Twitter probably follow about 3,000 people, so Lord knows you're not digging back to find out what I said. But after I threw that out there, this was my comment. President Obama had quoted and said this: more Americans, I think, in the days ahead are going to grow comfortable with gays and lesbians getting married, and he cited his own daughter's increasing comfort with the concept as evidence for him to state that with reason, and even why he is maybe the president wanted to get out in front of that idea. Now, I responded by saying this: what's worse, Obama's views on redefining marriage, or justifying it by saying his daughter is growing comfortable with the idea? But I wasn't done yet. And this is really where I want to focus this morning. And that is this: what's worse? The president, who clearly doesn't live by or see a value in the Judeo-Christian ethic, saying that telling the world what he thinks about marriage, or believers in Christ not being able to explain why this issue matters. Now, look, here's what I want to say this morning. Our job as leaders and shepherds and pastors and teachers is to equip the saints. Our job is to help you be what Christ wants you to be. God calls us to be salt and light in society. We are that agent which is to prevent decay and to bring light where there is darkness. So if that which is to prevent decay and to dispel darkness is itself compromised, why are we surprised to see decay and darkness all around us? Whenever I see our culture drifting, and man, I want to tell you, 30 years ago, somebody would have told you that the President of the United States would have said, I think our country needs to get over the idea that marriage is between a man and a woman. It's not that big a deal. We'll let men marry men and women marry women, give them all equal rights, call them the same thing. They would have told you were crazy, and that would never happen in our culture. It has happened in our culture and is happening in our culture. And so the question then, I think, falls on us. Hey, if we are the ones that are supposed to preserve, if we're the ones that are supposed to make people thirsty for truth, if we're the ones that are supposed to keep reinforcing truth and bring light where there is darkness, our problem ought not be with decay and darkness around us. Our first thought ought to be, where have we abdicated our role and failed to do what God has called us to do? And let's begin to evaluate our own hearts. And so right after that, I just posted this. I said, hey, Colossians 4, 2 through 6, 1 Peter 3, 15 and 16, 1 Timothy 2, I left out the 1 and 2. And I said, praying that you'll look those up, that you'll meditate on them, that you'll live them out, that you'll pass them on. So what do they say? Well, Colossians 4 says that we ought to devote ourselves to prayer. Be individuals that are continually abiding with God, yielding to His Spirit. Ephesians 6, 18 says that we should pray continually in the Spirit, which talks about living in constant reflection upon God, yielding to who He is, thinking biblically, letting the word of Christ richly dwell within us. When you get down to verses 5 and 6 of Colossians 4, it says, conduct yourself with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of every opportunity. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, as it were, in order that you might be able to serve everyone that you have a chance to interact with, is what verse 6 implies as it wraps up. And so I want to ask you, how have you done? Are you ready to give a winsome word? Are you ready to talk about why marriage is a big deal to God, who loves us and has our best interests in mind? Or are you overwhelmed when somebody says, what's the big deal? Why are you against people loving each other? 1 Peter 3:15-16 says this. It says, sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. It says, become like Jesus. And then always be prepared to make a defense when anyone asks you to give an account for the hope that is within you. So why do you feel that way? What's your passion? What's your belief? When God came here in the flesh, when Jesus was here, he had some compelling ideas. He spoke with a lot of passion. What was the reasoning behind that? What was his motivation? What is ours when we say we want to defend God's view of marriage? Is it just because we want our idea to win? Or do we believe that truth and goodness and blessing and prosperity and success is on our side, and a God who loves us wants to share that with us? It says, always be prepared to give an account when someone asks you to give an answer for the hope that is within you, and then it says, do it with gentleness and respect. It says, conduct yourself with wisdom toward outsiders. So in the thing in which they slander you, then in the day of God's visitation, we'll give glory to him and thank him that you were there to remind them of who he was and that he's good. 1 Timothy 2:1-2 just says this, I urge you that prayers and petitions and entreaties be made at all times for king and all those that are in authority. How are you doing it praying for your president? How are you doing it interacting with your senators and your congressmen? How are you doing it loving your neighbors that inform who our senators and congressmen are? How are you doing at registering to vote and in voting yourself and following your own conscience? Specifically as a Christ follower, Christ conscience. In verse 2 of 1 Timothy 2, it says to do that so that you might live a quiet and tranquil life, that you don't have to be civilly disobedient against Caesar or against the state. But folks, we are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And if the people don't understand why marriage is a big deal to God and why it needs to be defined between one man and one woman, those that are supposed to be the individuals that bring light and revelation and hope and create an understanding about those events, if we are silent, why are we surprised that there's a drift? This is a church issue, not a presidential issue. And we have got to be ready. And so, one last one, I just said this. This might be a good time for you, if you haven't, to visit manhattandeclaration.org and to check out that little website, to read it, sign it, and share it. So let me just take you to this. Manhattan Declaration is something that a group of us about 2 years ago now met in Manhattan, New York City, and we said, are there certain things that we believe we've got to draw a line in the sand and say, look, when government begins to make decisions, when a government by the people, for the people, of the people, begins to say, we're going to take this view on these issues, then we're going to say, listen, we're going to render to Caesar what is Caesar's, but we have got to render to God's what is God's, and we will not shrink back. And we've got to stand against these things. And we felt like there were 3 issues that were very clear, and the Manhattan Declaration talks about the issue of life, sanctity of life. And by the way, I would just be remiss on Mother's Day. We realize there are many of you who have made the decision maybe to not value the gift of life that God gave you, and you're here this Mother's Day with no child to hold because in fear or in impulse or in just a very darkened state, made the decision to terminate the life of your child. And can I just tell you something? Christ loves you, and he died for those kinds of decisions. If you're a man that's participated in that act, God's not done with you yet. We have a ministry here called Someone Cares, a ministry called Forgotten Fathers, to love you, to offer you healing, to offer you an ability to work through those with the hundreds of other women at Watermark that have made the exact same choice, that have found healing and forgiveness and restoration. And so I want to say to those of you that have made the decision not to value life within your womb, happy Mother's Day. And God bless you. And all of us have got issues in our heart that we wish that God could overcome. And I'm here to tell you this morning, that's who our God is. That's why we sing to him. We are prone to wonder, prone to leave the God we love, or maybe we never knew. And so we've done things that are damaging to other life and have been damaging to ours, even though you can't see the scars I know you know the scars are there. So happy Mother's Day. And may you find the forgiveness that Christ offers to you. We want to help you in that way. In that little perforated section where it says, how might we serve you? Just write down, I want to know if someone cares. And we'll have some women discreetly follow up with you. But what I would say is the issue of sanctity of life, the issue of marriage and why it's a big deal, because those that hold the family hold the future. The family is a foundational structure of any society. It always has been, always will be. When the family is devastated, societies and cultures associated with it are devastated. And God, who loves us, has told us how family ought to look and how it ought to interact. And I'm going to talk about that extensively this morning now. But that's another one. And then finally, just the whole issue of religious liberty. Not freedom to worship and quiet the way you want, but to live in the context of the world that you live in a way that is consistent with your conviction before God. And so this is what the Manhattan Declaration website looks like, and I'm going to direct you to it for this reason. I want you to go there. I hope you click on it. I hope you read the declaration. I hope you sign the declaration if your conscience allows you. And then I hope you share it with other people. Over 500,000 people have already joined us in this. And I also want then for you to just go up there where it says read the blog, because this week there's a blog that was posted by one of my friends that just says, listen, this is how you can respond with grace. Seasoned with salt, as it were, to the president's and others' view about marriage. And then there's another resource. A few weeks ago, I was up in D.C. with some friends, and we put together a little DVD, and the DVD is called Breaking the Spiral of Silence. It comes from a woman that lived as actually a sociologist. She was a newspaper reporter and sociologist in Hitler's Germany in the midst of fascism and Nazism. She looked and she goes, how in the world are people just all kind of accepting and swallowing this idea that all creatures are not, all humans don't share equal dignity and value, whether they be homosexuals or Jews or Catholics or communists? How in the world are we able to treat people this way? And she just noted what happens is that typically when you've got a very powerful leadership speaking to a large group, when he speaks in a way that is intimidating, when he speaks in a way that acts like everybody should believe this, and if nobody speaks up, everybody in that room goes, this doesn't sound right to me, but because nobody else is saying that is nonsense and foolishness and dangerous, they start to believe everybody else must believe it, and there starts to become this increasingly loud and powerful vortex of acceptance and silence that eventually leads societies to where they were just 80 years ago in a way that we said we'd never get back there again. Well, we are moving that direction quickly. We've already watched over 50 million of our own children be extinguished as a matter of convenience, as we've convinced ourselves they're not people. We're seeing it encroach us from the other side of life, where we have this utilitarian view. We're seeing it redefine marriage. We're seeing us redefine truth and the ethic that has made us live in the way that we live. And so there's a resource, breakingthespiralofsilence.com. I share that with you this morning because I'm not going to teach on this today. I'm going to point you to that as a resource. There is a resources tab that is right there, and you can see there's little one-pagers that allow you to really become conversational on the issues of life and marriage and liberty. You can find that there's all kinds of more articles that are extensive where you can be fully equipped. If you read those, you have questions, you're confused, let us know. We did a counterpoint about 3 months ago on the issue of marriage. You can go to our website, watermark.org. You can hit the media tab and you can just do a search for why marriage is a big deal. You can listen to the conversation. You can listen to the message I did on homosexuality and same-sex marriage, where I issued an apology, an assignment, and an ask about how we address that issue. There are all kinds of resources that are there if we just gather in our little sanctified rooms once a week and tell ourselves, aren't we good for what we believe, and we are not salt and light. Why are we surprised when we see our world moving the direction it is? You have got to engage in loving civil discourse where you respectfully and winsomely, with speech seasoned with salt, as it were, are ready to jump on CNN, Fox, over your backyard fence, in the stands, waiting for your kids to come out of school with your neighbors in a loving way. And those are resources to help you.